Welcome back to another episode of In the Cutting Room. I'm Matthew Gattozzi, founder of Goodo Studios. We are here. If you're new, In the Cutting Room is a show all about going deep on the creative decision making of advertisements. And I'm going to be sharing my decision making, how I think about ads. This was a podcast that I made and am making for the people that work with me here at Goodo Studios. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to share this publicly and let other people listen in on these conversations and on these trainings. That's what we're doing. And the real, reason why I called it In the Cutting Room is because when filmmakers would, back in the day, actually cut film and stitch them together to make a movie, there were pieces of film left in the cutting room. And it was those decisions that made great pieces of art. And that's what we're doing here today. Now, in last episode, I mentioned today's topic. It's a good one, which is defining creative testing once and for all. All right. So after this episode, there should be no confusion on what creative testing is or means. Ooh, I really am putting myself out there as someone who's really trying to kind of define what is creative testing. So as I've been making this podcast, I've been writing for a few years now on creative testing and what it is. And I've talked a lot about how data can actually help you with creative decision making. That's kind of like the biggest part of this whole podcast. I have like a 5-part series to start, right? Like I am like very big on data connecting with creative decision making. Now, the thing is as I've been writing a lot, I've actually very surprisingly have seen a lot of opposition towards creative testing. And people are like, oh, don't creative test, almost like saying it in a way that it's like that I am preaching the good word of creative testing so that people can pay for our services. And I always have I'm like, I don't get that. That's not what's happening. I'm not saying creative test just so that you can make more content and, pay us. I'm saying to creative test because this is something that's based out of history, 100-year history. Claude Hopkins, Ogilvy, Gaples, all the greatest copywriters, all the greatest advertisers, all did creative testing and scientific advertising. So whenever I hear that, I'm confused. Why are people saying to not do that? Because people have always done that. It's not a new thing. It's not like creative testing is a new idea because meta, right? So I took a step back. I went deep on these people's content and I even talked to them and I realized, oh shoot, I know why they feel that way. I know why they're saying that. It's because the definitions are all over the place as well as the standards. So I was like, all right, that makes sense. We need to now define what we're even talking about. I'm getting in arguments on Twitter. People are saying things on Twitter without really having a definition. And we can't have fruitful conversations about creative and ads on any platform or channel if we don't have a good definition. So today, I'm going to clear the air for us. I'm going to bring in what is creative testing. I think this is my step. I really do feel like this is what I feel like after this, we're good. I could be wrong. I'd love to know your thoughts, but here we go. We're going to talk about and define creative testing, and then I'm going to go into kind of what's a good test versus a wasted test. Because actually, I agree. Once I dug into other people's content, I agree with what they're saying. But again, there needs to be definition, because without the definition, it's like saying that it's all bad and it's not all bad. There's a lot of nuance that got missed. So let's do it. First of all, there are 4 stages of creative testing. So when it comes to testing, there are what I define as 4 levels to test. I'm going to start from the top and then kind of move down to like more granular stages. Okay. First stage, product. You can't have an ad without a product. So like a new product is a test for your brand. This could be a whole new SKU altogether. It could be like a limited drop of something. Either way, you are validating if this new product is good for your business. Okay. So first stage is product. And this is like very much like in the merchandising side of things. Okay. Second stage. So like right below that. So you got product. Right below it, you've got ad angle. Okay. You are testing out a new idea completely for a product. The product does not have to be new. It can be for the product you already have validated. You are trying to see if this ad angle or ad idea can sell this product. So, for example, let's say your brand has never done founder ads, but then you want to do founder ads. This is testing this ad angle. Do founder ads videos work with this audience? Another example is if you have a food product and you want to do a blind taste testing as an ad. You are trying to validate if doing blind taste testing videos will help sell your product more than your other ads currently. And those other ads are not blind taste testing videos. Okay. So you've got your product, right? So let's say you already have product market fit. Cool. So stage one, check. Stage two is ad angle. You're trying to figure out a new way to talk about your product, right? Like you're not validating the product. The product's already validated, but now you're on the ad angle level and you're trying to sell that product and have a new like ad idea or ad angle. Okay. Now the third section. So third stage, boom, you got ad angle. Third stage is ad section. Okay. So typically you see people testing the hook, also kind of known as for the first 3 seconds of your video. And you might change out the 3 seconds, but have the same ad after. And you are trying to see what hook section is best with the rest of the ad unit to find the winning ad. You could also think about adding in a section to an ad, like a testimonial section at the end of an ad to extend it. So it doesn't always have to be the hook, but if you think about your ad in kind of like these different units or these different sections, then and you wanted to add in a new unit or a new section to kind of extend the ad or whatever, that also could be a test or something you could do. The goal is to not change the idea or angle, but to enhance or optimize this ad angle. So let's say, you do the blind taste testing video and like the overall ad idea is working. And you're like, you know what? I think that we could improve the hook, which would improve how many people are viewing this. And in fact, I think that would end up helping give a better expectation of the ad and therefore sell this product more because more people will be engaged in this video. And we know that we believe that this video is working, and I think we can optimize it or enhance it. So you go and do a variation of that ad. You change up the first 3 seconds. Awesome. Now you've got this new ad test, and you're testing, does this hook improve the overall ad and the outcome selling the product? Yes or no, comparative to the original ad. Or let's say you're like, hey, this blind taste testing thing is great, but then I want to add a whole other section at the end of it to explain the product more in depth. Does that improve the outcome of selling the product? You're not changing the blind taste testing video. That's the core angle or idea. You're just trying to improve that idea or angle. Okay. Now the fourth stage, there's a fourth stage, and the fourth stage is ad Details. This would be changing nothing in the ad except design aspects. For example, you could test the captions being blue instead of white, and you would be comparing if white captions are better than blue captions. All right. So let's say you have your original blind taste testing video and it's working, and you're like, you know what? We're going to change these blue or these white captions to blue, and we're going to see if that works. And then you're going to compare that ad based on the blue versus the white captions. And whichever one is better, you're like, hey, that's a winner. Sure. Okay, so let me just go back. We've got stage 1, product. Stage 2, ad angle or ad idea. So new ideas. Stage 3, ad section. And stage 4, ad details. All right. So what stage of test should you do? So this is where, so defining this is already really helpful, right? There's 4 stages here, right? Where the discrepancy comes into is, when I talk about creative strategy, and I think most, like the creative people, in marketing, like I think of like a Jesse from Fire Team. I think that myself, when we talk about creative strategy, I think that many people make the mistake and think that we're talking about the last stage, which is ad detail. Like, I think that when we talk about creative strategy, people are like, oh, like you shouldn't creative test because what's the difference of these captions? It doesn't really matter. Like, they are so focused or maybe misinterpreting it as stage 4 ad detail stuff. But for me, I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, I'm exclusively talking about stage 2 and 3, which is ad angle or idea and ad sections. My hunch is that most of the other ad creative people are talking about section 2 and 3. But I think from others from the outside just haven't understood that because we haven't defined it. And so I think when people talk about creative test, they're like, oh, should you do like some people are saying creative testing is bad because they think, oh, you should be doing more ad ideas versus like caption testing, which I agree. And there are other people who are trying to talk about it and they are exclusively talking about like ad sections, ad ideas, but they're being misinterpreted as like we're testing ad captions and stuff. And it's like, yeah, I agree with you. So in the past, I've actually talked about how merchandising can actually supercharge your account and your business. Like, I 100% believe stage 1 is big, like testing products and SKUs. That is just product development is just not something that I touch. So I'm not going to speak to that. I can't really speak to that. I also recognize that for most brands, being able to do a bunch of product testing and things like that, product development isn't a strategy until you're really getting into like 8-9 figures, right? So like, to me, it's hard. I can't really speak to it. And it's not always like a huge, I wouldn't suggest probably doing a ton of product development when you're still trying to find product market fit for your first SKU, right? So that being said, number 1, stage 1 product is huge and amazing. It's just not something that I can touch. But I'm going to say that trying that out as a way in which to test and scale your account, I think it's a great way. So let's talk about stage 2, because in my opinion, stage 2 is where everyone can play and I think should focus on. Okay. I think that the issue or the argument against this idea of like why creative strategy is bad is because a lot of people out there really are only trying to test like hooks, and they're like, this is creative testing. It's like, no. Like, you need to be making a huge, massive effort on new ideas, new, fresh ways to talk about your product and ultimately sell your product. I think that many people will agree to test angles. What I don't understand from people is what happens after that. Okay, so you do an ad angle. Let's say it kind of works, but not great. Do you just toss that whole idea out? Some would say yes. And I think that that's just too soon to make a decision. And that's where stage 3 comes in. So, like, again, I think that majority of the time you should be focusing on new ideas. But let's say you have a new idea, and let's say you don't even do a hook variation. You just do one video, one script, all that stuff. And you just do it. And then you're like, oh, it didn't work. To just toss that out is crazy to me, especially because of how hard each video is to make. And so I think it's not always worth it just to throw it out completely. Now, there are times where it's just so bad that, yeah, maybe you should, right? But learn from it. Learn from it. Always learn from it, right? We've talked about that in the past. Learn from it. But I think this is where stage 3 comes in. I think this is where I want to kind of like talk a little bit about. So you should dissect that ad with data. And I've talked about this before. The hook rate, the hold rate, video average play time. I'm looking at ads to car. I'm looking at click-through rate. I'm looking at the ROAS. I'm looking at MER, any of the other North Star metrics that the brand is looking at, whatever that is, right? And I will link the newsletters and all the writing and all of the podcasts to this so you can read it and learn about it. But like, let's just say and assume you already know how to read data, creative data, for the sake of this podcast. By looking at the data, you could identify a few iterations of this ad angle to see if you make those changes and will the ad improve and ultimately validate the test in stage 2, the ad angles. Okay, so what I mean by that is you have an ad angle, stage 2, and you go out and you do it and it works all right. Before you say, you know what, we're never going to do this blind taste test again, why don't you try to find ways to see if like you could cut it up in a different way that makes the ad different? It's the same concept. But before you say, oh, blind taste test doesn't work for my food brand because you did one video, looking at the ad sections and looking at the data to say, oh, what if we changed the hook here? Or what if we added an extra section here? Or what if we change something up? Not only will you see what is engaging from the ad section level and if you have improvements there, but also you will then allow yourself to validate the ad angle. Going back to thinking about advertisement from a scientific approach, the scientific method, right? This is something you learn in like elementary science, which is you have a hypothesis, you come up with a test, you run that test, you have data to go back to your hypothesis, decide if it's true or not, but then it should allow you to ask another question to then go and have another test with data to look back and then see it again, right? So it's not, if you take that and transpose that onto these stages of ad testing, right? You start with ad angle. You know, hey, this product is great. I know people want it, but I need to find a new way to talk about this product. I think blind taste testing is a great idea. Okay, you do one video and it's not really working. That does not necessarily mean that you have enough data to say, hey, you know what? Blind taste testing overall for this account will never work. There are people out there that will say, oh, just come up with new ideas. Don't do any sort of ad stage 3. I think that's doing a disservice to actually figuring out your ad ideas and finding ones that can work, because I've seen it time and time again. you can make a few adjustments on the ad section level, stage 3, and all of a sudden you finally find something that works. And now you've validated stage 2, the ad idea. So blind taste testing does work if you do it in this way, right? Because an ad idea, there's so many ways in which you could do an ad idea. So to just toss out an ad idea after one pass is not giving it a fair shot. Now, what I will say is that iterating 10 times off of an ad idea, like to me, that angle might not be working. And I think that you shouldn't be doing too many iterations. And I think that's the problem with a lot of people when they talk about creative testing, like as if you can iterate your way to success. Like I think at a certain point, like you can't do infinite testing and infinite iteration. Like you've got to be able to make changes, see results, or move on, right? Like you cannot like be on, oh, I'm trying this blind taste test for the 20th time. It's like, I think it's not working, right? If I were to give you, because I think what happens, and I understand why people will say, hey, don't creative test, or creative testing is overrated, yada, yada, yada. What they're saying is that doing too much in stage 3 is not actually as helpful as opposed to spending more time on new ad angles. I agree with that. I 100% agree with that. I think that you should be focusing mainly on stage 2. I just don't think you should give up stage 2 after one try. And I think you can use stage 3 ad section testing to help you find and validate if that ad idea actually works. I will tell you personally how many iterations we usually do. Okay. We, Goodo Studios, do not iterate more than a few times before we call it quits on an ad angle. A few times. I'm talking like 2 or 3. All right. There are times where you could iterate more on something, but honestly, at that point, it usually just becomes a new idea. And so then I would just consider it just like, hey, we're doing a new stage 2 test versus a stage 3 test. So I understand why people are, maybe having issues with creative testing because they're thinking you're creating, all these tests about blue captions or blue text or all these different hooks and you're not creating new ad ideas. I mean, I agree with that. You should be more focused on new ideas, fresh content, fresh visuals, etc. But again, stage 3 ad sections is really, really key. I also would just say as a warning, if your ad creative person is telling you the ad didn't work because of the color of the captions, I would run. Psychology and copywriting are the foundation of why an ad works. You could try to optimize for best performance by doing a stage 4 test, but the gains to me are just so minimal that it's just not worth it. Like, yeah, sure, maybe blue captions are better than white captions, but like not enough to be like, your ROAS is going to go from a 2 to a 4. Like, like you're not going to like all of a sudden like find like 2x the efficiency because you changed your captions. I would rather spend that time just trying to find like the best ad sections. I would try to spend more time rather than on optimizing your captions, like on new ad ideas and try to beat that ad. Like, to me, that's the biggest thing. I think brands need to be taking bigger swings and not focusing on color type of captions. So I don't even do stage 4 type tests. I really don't think it's worth it. The only way or only place where you might want to do it is if you wanted to do a test on like your branded fonts versus like native to the platform fonts. That to me could be the only thing that might be worth it. And I've seen that test, and I've seen people actually find that branded text works better for them than the organic text, and vice versa. So like if you are brand heavy, maybe you do want to test that out. and I'm cool with that. But other than that, like I would say most stage 4 tests are. So that got me thinking a little bit about like benchmarks, like in your ad account and essentially like kind of in your creative strategy testing stack, if you will. I think that you should be testing stage 2 ad angles, different ones at the same time. Like you should always be testing net new ideas as well as optimizing those ad angles and ad ideas each month. Now, I understand that when you are trying new ad angles and doing more stage 2 tests, that means that it requires more resources and time because you got to like write full new scripts, get a full new shot list in production and editing and all that stuff. And I think that's why a lot of people shy away from doing it. I think, unfortunately, most people are not doing more ad ideas just because of the practicals of making it happen. And it's easier to come up with the 30th version of a static than create a new video. So they're like, let's just do more of that. But the brands that I see succeeding, not only in my account and my clients, but also others, are the ones who are willing to be bold and test new ideas out monthly. So before you go and say, let's go make some new ideas, before you leave this episode, let's diagnose your account. Look at all the ads from the last 6 months. Okay, so pull all of your content, all your ads from the last 6 months, and ask these 3 questions. 1, how many were new products or SKUs? 2, how many were new ad angles versus level 3 iterations? And 3, did you have level 4 iterations? Like, did you have any sort of level 4 tests? So essentially what I want you to kind of figure out is how many level 1s did you have? How many level 2s did you have? How many level 3s and 4s, right? So again, level 1 is product, level 2 is ad angle, level 3 is ad section, and level 4 is ad details. I think this is what I think. I give you some approximations. Here we go. Level 1, 10%. Level 2, 50%. I think half of your ads, you should be always going after new ideas. Level 3, 35%. Maybe even more than that. I said like approximately 5% on level 4. Honestly, I'd probably even do less than that. 1%, 2%. And then have level 3 be like 37, 39%, or even just more on level 2. The key is that, I understand that depending on your size, your industry, all that stuff, it's going to affect like your SKUs and product testing and level 1 stuff. So, take that with a grain of salt, right? These are just general benchmarks that I would like kind of look at. But like, I would definitely say, look at level 2. How many of these are just new ideas, or is this just like, are you just mashing up the same old, right? Does everything just look the same, feel the same, say the same? Or do you have like very net new ideas like half the time? Like that's what I would be pushing for. If you can push for that, then like I think the other stuff will kind of like work its magic. But like I think that you should really be pushing for that. And again, I'll have everything linked on how to read and understand the data so that can actually help you come up with level 3 tests. But to get level 2 test, you need to really go back to studying your customer. Really go back to understanding what is going to motivate them to buy. And I genuinely love like making this podcast, making this episode, because I think that it's really awesome that we are talking about creative and ads more and more than we are like media buying and some of this other stuff, right? Because creative is so important. But because a lot of this stuff has not ever really been defined, I think that conversations can be not as fruitful because we are not looking at and talking about creative testing in the right way. We're not defining it in the right way. But I think if we can define this, and there's levels to this, right? So it's not just creative testing. It's, are you creative testing on the product level? Are you creative testing on the ad angle level? Are you creative testing on the ad section level and on the ad details level, right? So there are creative tests that should be happening across those 4 levels. I think a lot of people are kind of smashing them together. Maybe some people are thinking, oh, you only do creative testing on captions, and most of the time that's not actually true. But the point is that if we don't have definitions, then we can't have great conversations. And in fact, miscommunication can happen, and even confusion, misinformation, if you will. So I hope that this podcast episode is a good attempt at defining creative testing. And I hope that you guys can understand it a little bit better the way I see it. I'd love to know if this was helpful, if you agree with this, if you don't agree with this. Maybe you would say you have different general benchmarks on these different levels. I'd love to know. Am I missing a level? Maybe I am. I want to know from you. So let me know. Hit me up. You can find me on Twitter, mainly, Matthew Gattozzi. If you need help coming up with ideas, understanding your data, just reach out. I'm here to help in any way that I can. I'm having fun making these episodes. Being solo is kind of freeing. I can just record whenever I want. It's a good time. I hope you guys are enjoying this. What I will say, though, is that I have a few guests coming on, and we are going to be showing ads. I'm going to be grilling them on exactly why they write that, why they say that, why they shoot that, why they edited it in this way, how did it work, bringing the data, things that work, things that didn't work. It's going to be a good time. So stay tuned for those episodes. Those will be coming out in the future. But until then, you're stuck with me talking and rambling about creative testing. Thank you so much for watching another episode. Hit us up, follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the things. Wherever you watch this, I appreciate you more than you can imagine. Thanks for watching, and that's it. Peace.